Hi, I'm Michael Almeida. I'm the Public Sector Sales Lead at TQA, and I'm here with Yaasha Hasan, the Deputy Director for the NHS Automation Accelerator.
Hi, Michael.
Can you tell us a little bit about what the NHS Automation Accelerator is and what it does?
Yeah, of course. So the Automation Accelerator is the leading center of excellence for automation for the NHS. We're actually based within the NHS. We like to think of ourselves as a digital transformation powerhouse for the NHS, building out and offering tailored products and services that enable data driven and high impact digital transformation across organizations in the country.
There are quite a lot of organisations, both external to the NHS and inside the NHS itself, that are trying to do similar things. What makes the Automation Accelerator different, and why should the NHS trusts and different bodies be working with you?
There are a few different reasons why NHS organizations choose to work with us. I would say the main and the most important one is the fact that we were founded by the NHS and we work for the NHS. We're not really incentivized by making any margin, and whatever we do make do get invested back into the NHS. And all of our design principles and how we approach building out solutions are revolved around NHS core principles. For example, patient safety, health equity, compliance, information governance. So we really have the NHS in mind as we build out our solutions. There are a few other reasons as well. One of the most important ones also is how cutting edge and bold we are with how we approach transformation. So we actually look at it from the systems perspective and really prioritize scalability and standardization and push for that universal transformation that can be adopted quickly in NHS organizations across the country. I'll mention one last thing, which is our scale and influence. We're extremely well integrated with NHS England leadership and regional leadership, which allows us to tap into the wide network of experts in the country to build out optimal solutions to address the problems we're addressing, really.
I think one of the things that are really important to a whole heap of NHS organisations is scalability, making sure that the things that they are building are sustainable as well, and that they can be taken on, and that they are going to have longevity. Can you tell us a little bit about the kind of successes that the accelerator has had, especially in those kind of areas?
Yeah, of course. So we've been around for 3 years now. And over those 3 years, we've worked with over 20 NHS organizations across the country from north, south, east, west. And along the way, we have really expanded our portfolio of solutions as well. Where we started off kind of corporate services back office, now we have expanded across clinical areas as well. So I'll give you some examples. We have introduced transformation in outpatient, cancer, primary care, as well as radiology. We're really doing some exciting work across a portfolio of programs. One of the most important and exciting one that we're working on right now is the national project around automating the validation process behind waiting lists. This is so crucial, Michael, because we all know how long the waiting list is, and it's so important to be able to see those patients. So what we're doing is using best-in-class technology, leveraging expertise around the country to build out this scalable, standardizable, and cost-effective solution, the output of which will give us a national blueprint that will enable 60% of NHS organizations to adopt this solution, actually automate the validation process with the ultimate goal of reducing their waiting list by 10%, which is huge if you think about that. And not only does that reduce the waiting list, but it allows for missed appointments by patients who don't really need the appointment to go down, allowing for more patients to be seen faster.
Delivering patient care faster, moving from the back office to having clinical impact, and also looking at deploying solutions across up to 60% of the NHS. That's massive. How do you see the Automation Accelerator fitting into the NHS long-term plan?
Yeah, everything we do is centered around the NHS long-term plan. I would highlight three aspects of the long-term plan that we're really honing in on. So the first part is the workforce productivity. With everything we do, we know we are trying to release capacity from the existing workforce. But not only that, we also upskill and enable those workforce to do more with the automations that we do build out for them. Ultimately, all of this does have an effect on the requirement and need for more agency spending. When you do release capacity, you don't necessarily have to spend extra to get the agency staff from agencies. The other bit is transforming corporate services. We know there's a big push for universalizing transformation within corporate services. How different can corporate services like HR and finance and legal be across the 215 acute systems in the country? Not really. So there is a huge element opportunity of standardizing that, and we're building towards a universal transformation productized service to be deployed in the NHS. Last but not least, we are digitally enabling workflows, whether it be using AI-enabled workflows or process mining. We are leveraging cutting-edge technology to do that, and that's a big focus for NHS long-term plan.
When you mentioned there you're looking at using that cutting edge technology, that emerging kind of technology, that's a burgeoning scene at the moment. Uh, my experience working with the NHS is that it tends to be fairly risk averse. Emerging technologies are not always implemented quickly. In fact, actually, I would go so far as to say that oftentimes they're not really emerging anymore. They've become established, which is why the NHS is then implementing it. In that journey to accelerate emerging technologies into established technologies, what role do you think the Automation Accelerator plays in that?
Michael, there's emerging technology in healthcare, transforming healthcare everywhere. Yes, to different extents in different places, but it's happening. We're seeing it in diagnostics. We're seeing it in acceleration of drug discovery. We're seeing it in predictive and analytics, streamlining of administrative tasks. But the biggest question here, especially for the NHS, is that how do you make it easy for decision makers and end users of these technologies not only access, but understand, digest, deploy, implement, maintain, and the wraparound of change management needed to actually have success and actualize on the benefits that hope to actualize on with these technologies. Now, that is where we come in. That is our biggest kind of value proposition we have to offer to NHS organizations. Because we know the NHS inside and out, we know exactly what needs to be done to break down these technologies and translate it to meet the needs of the decision makers, meet the needs of the users. We do it in a few different ways. I'll highlight the top 3 ways we do that. So the first is we really make the use of technology, so the use cases relevant and comprehensive. We know there's so many offerings in the market right now. It's a little overwhelming, to be honest. And a lot of those offerings are quite siloed. So it really makes it difficult for decision makers to purchase one that would make their biggest problem go away. And that's where we come in, because we actually work very closely with these decision makers and end users to build out those solutions in a way that comprehensively tackles their bigger issue and actually delivers value. The second bit is, as mentioned before, we prioritize standardization and scalability. We work with different national bodies who have figured out what the standard process should look like that delivers efficiency. And we design our solutions in a way that actually delivers on those standardization and allows and enables organizations we work with to release the efficiency that you would get. Last but not least, we package the solution up and the technology up to be NHS ready, right? We understand the compliance necessary, whether it's AI and the ethics behind it. How do you deploy responsible AI? We understand that, and we package it up so it is NHS ready.
I think you hit on a really key point there at the end about responsible AI. I know that it's a hot topic for a lot of organizations, especially in healthcare, making sure that things are happening and things are happening in a controlled way and you understand what's going on in the technology. When we talk about AI, we divvy it up into 3, responsible AI, we divvy up into 3 segments: safe AI, trustworthy AI, and AI for good. Safe AI being, I know what all the catastrophic consequences of this going wrong could be, and I've put in the guardrails to make sure they can never happen. It's an impossibility for those catastrophes to occur. Trustworthy AI, I know that the data that I've trained my AI models on is not biased, or it's not been collected in a biased way, and the model is explainable, so I understand how it's coming up to the decisions it's coming up with. And then AI for good, so I'm doing it to improve the experience of my colleagues, of my staff, and my customers, whether they be patients or customers in the true sense of the word. And then all those things together make up responsible AI. Responsible AI is not just one and done, it's the continuous application of those principles. How can the accelerator help the rest of the NHS absorb that? Because that is quite a large cultural shift from not just the NHS, but from the way that most organizations are used to consuming technology.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good question. And I'll use one of our example projects that we recently kicked off. We are looking at transforming human resources end to end from hire to retire. And we are looking at the transformation from the perspective of using the most advanced and emerging technologies that can actually address root cause and completely redesign it in a way that reduces the time end to end and optimizes the candidate or the employee experience during their time. Some of the things that components of this transformation we're looking at would include AI, for example, sourcing of candidates or engaging with candidates or screening candidates. And it's just so very important to be responsible around how you deliver that AI. Especially, we know that diversity and inclusion is one of the most important things, especially as we think of health equity, right? And so the way we would do that is by incorporating these key principles into how these AI models get built and then get deployed into organizations. So you mentioned safe AI. We would have a human in intervening and approving how the candidates that are getting screened or sourced. Having that human layer will ensure it's safe. They're not going out there doing the work of, they're just reviewing and making sure it makes sense, right? And it is not biased towards one protected characteristic over the other. Similarly, you mentioned trustworthy, and we're doing that by making sure before the model gets built, it's getting built on data that's representative of the demographic of the country, and it's not biased towards one or the other. And last but not least, it is AI for good, right? The more you speed up recruitment, the better patients get the clinical staff and the non-clinical staff they need to support in their patient care. And also, the NHS is more cost effective in how they go about recruiting and reducing their spending on agency spending. It's our publicly funded money, right? So we have a financial
True.
responsibility of making the best use of it.
That sounds incredibly exciting. And something that you touched on previously is that it can be quite overwhelming in the market at the moment. We're in this Cambrian explosion of technology. AI is creating more and more products much faster. What was state of the art a couple of months ago is now obsolete. How can decision makers and how can the Automation Accelerator help decision makers in the NHS make sense of all of the noise and fanfare that's coming out from the market and understand where they should put their investment and their time in adopting these newer technologies?
Yeah, no, such a good question, especially because we know time is precious, especially for those doctors, those clinical workers, and those decision makers who are just so overwhelmed with the day to day. And that's really where we come in. We are the ones who are going out there, evaluating the trends, looking at the insights, looking at the benefits of those that have already been deployed. Today, we're here at the UIPath on Tour event, exploring how AI and other intelligent automation technologies have been used not only in healthcare in other countries, but also in other industries, right? And here we are assessing how it's been successful in those industries and if there are ways we can actually bring it over to the world of healthcare, so that decision makers or clinicians and doctors, nurses are able to focus more on what they're good at and what they enjoy doing, which is taking care of patients and delivering better care. So yeah.
I think that there are some barriers. Once you have those decision makers understand where they want to invest their time, there are still some barriers in getting these technology initiatives off the ground. A big one is financing. For a lot of emerging technologies and AI especially, a lot of the value sits on an S curve where you have this sort of floor at the very beginning where you have to invest quite a lot of money up front for not very much value. And it's only when you get into that steep incline after a fair amount of money has already been spent that you start to see significant value and you start seeing that compound benefit. How can the accelerator help those decision makers, the people that want to push their organizations forward, use technology to deliver first class care, get over that first hurdle when it comes to financing this sort of technology?
Yeah, no, very good point. And it's not easy being an early adopter, especially if you don't have a really big wallet. And we know that there aren't many organizations within the NHS ecosystem that kind of has that level of funding. And that's also where we come in, right? Because we're for the NHS, we represent the NHS. We can pull resources from different organizations who are willing to pitch in that pilot, in that first version of launching of a transformative solution. And as we scale and achieve economies of scale, we lower that barrier to cost of kind of adopting new technologies. And we allow for those organizations that may have not had the initial or ability to invest the whole amount in the initial go around of the pilot to be able to access those and adopt those and accelerate those in their organization. So I think that's something that's really unique about our organization because our primary focus is how do we look out for the NHS? How do we deliver value for the NHS? How do we make transformative solution cost effective so actually NHS organizations can deploy them meaningfully and in an accelerated way? We're able to do that for them.
So I'm a decision maker in the NHS. You've helped me make sense of the noise. You're helping me overcome that initial barrier to investment. I, I think that's one of the things I'll also be thinking about is I have a project backlog as long as my arm. There's so many people crying out for resource and time and effort from my team who are overworked and stretched. I, and now I need to add another project to that backlog. How can the accelerator help me deploy this technology in a way that doesn't uh, overburden my team, my staff?
Yeah, that is a crucial and important part about the current capacity levels of the NHS and where everyone is strained, right? And it's really difficult to get the right resource to build the right technology for the right kind of problem. And I think that's where we're really good at getting whatever required resources we need to build out anything. And one unique thing about us is that we're very flexible to the scale. So depending on demand and volume of projects and organizations interested, we can actually scale up and down our team to meet the needs of the problem we're trying to solve. And that's something you can't really easily get within NHS organizations.
And then taking that one step further to how do you make that sustainable? Once the project's delivered, it needs to be maintainable. My team needs to adopt it. How can you help me as an NHS organization, consume that technology in a way that provides longevity?
Yeah, we actually have a two-pronged approach. Primarily, we want to help NHS organizations bridge that gap by offering managed service that's necessary to actually maintain the solutions that we build out. But along the way, we actually train and upskill the organization's local staff to be able to maintain those on their own and eventually actually be able to build some of those solutions on their own. We have a huge focus on enabling organizations and training their staff to be able to deliver a lot of those technical deliverables on their own.
Final barrier that at least that I see is that there seems to be a growing technology divide between the trusts that are attracting lots of funding, talent to push the technology into not just the back office process, but the clinical process really affect and impact patient care versus some of the trusts that are a little bit behind the curve. And I know you can see that they're struggling to catch up, that they're not able to attract the talent because they want to go where the interesting, new and funky things are being done in those more technologically enabled trusts. And also in the private sector, I think we are also guilty of being drawn to the trusts that are doing those really cool things. And sometimes I think the trusts are a little bit behind, can be neglected. How can the accelerator help those trusts too and try and close that technology gap?
Yeah. So one of our key principles is standardization and scalability. And the way we go about actually applying that is whenever we do a project, we make sure it has a representative of diverse trusts in the pilot. So we are taking into account the diversity of issues, problems, pain points that we're actually building the solution around. And that's super important in order to make sure you're making a solution scalable, right? If you don't take into the diverse landscape, whether it be equity or digital maturity into account, you're not able to build ready to scale solutions, right? So that's one way we ensure that we have representatives from different spectrum of digital maturity in our projects. But another way we do that is by lowering the barrier to adopt and accelerate technologies by lowering that cost of adopting technology because we work with early adopters to secure the initial funding, to deploy the initial version of the transformative solution. With economies of scale, we're able to achieve that cost effectiveness and lower the price and scale it across those organizations that wouldn't have been able to initially tap into the first version, let's just say. So we're able to tackle health equity in that way.
Final question for me. You're doing some really cool and amazing things. I think you're making a massive difference across the NHS. How does your partnership with TQA help you drive success and deliver impact across the NHS at large?
Yeah, so I have personally been very impressed with how TQA has partnered with us. Really feel like TQA has put in a lot of effort in building out a very trusted partnership with us. you all are very feedback oriented. It's really easy to see how customer obsessed you are and how agile you are in delivering and working on those feedback and really giving us a wraparound service that we need to deliver our work to the NHS. And so very impressed with that. And just to add on to that, I really appreciate you're not just doing work for the sake of doing work. You always include a strategic overlay to everything you do. And that's important, right? You're being our trusted strategic partners in delivering on the vision that we're setting out to deliver. So really happy to be working with you.
Thank you, Yasha.